I never thought love could be weaponized against me. Not like this. Not with the man I thought I'd spend forever with. Before I begin, if you've ever been underestimated, humiliated, or shut out just because of where you come from, hit that subscribe button. You're not alone. And my story? It's for you. My name's Clara. And when I met Daniel Prescott, I was just another working-class girl finishing up her interior design degree and juggling 2 part-time jobs. He was the golden boy from an elite family, the kind of man whose shirts cost more than my rent. But somehow he chose me, or so I thought. We met at a charity gala. I was there as part of a student internship with the event organizers. He was there because, of course, the Prescott family was one of the top donors. Daniel was funny, charming, and completely disarming. He kept sneaking over to my side of the ballroom under the guise of needing event updates. It was corny. It was cute. And it worked. 1 month later, we were inseparable. I met his friends. They liked me, or at least they were polite. But his family? That's where the cracks began to show. His mother, Veronica Prescott, was a porcelain doll with a venomous smile. She wore pearls like armor and asked me passive-aggressive questions like, "Do your parents have any lineage worth knowing?" Or, "Will you be pursuing a real career after your little degree?" Daniel always brushed it off. "That's just how she is," he'd say. But then came the day I walked into the Prescott estate for a family brunch and overheard my own name being dissected. I wasn't meant to hear it. I had come in through the side gate like they asked me to, and as I stepped through the hedges, I heard Veronica's voice, cool and biting. "She's sweet, but you know this won't last. She's not one of us, Daniel. The poor marry the poor. The rich marry the rich. You don't mix bloodlines with people who clip coupons." Daniel said nothing. That silence broke something in me. I should have left. That would have been the smart thing. But love has a way of convincing you to stay, even when every sign is screaming run. Daniel apologized when I told him I'd overheard. He said he was just trying to keep the peace. "She'll come around," he promised. So I waited. I bent. I compromised. And then one day he proposed. On a yacht. With champagne and rose petals and a photographer I hadn't agreed to. But still, I said yes. Because I wanted this to work. I spent the next 6 months planning a wedding I could barely afford. Veronica insisted on a venue that cost more than my entire student loan debt. She vetoed the dress I wanted. She handpicked a guest list that included oil executives and no one from my side of the family. And the worst part? She made me feel grateful for it. "Don't embarrass Daniel," she'd whisper. By month 7, I was losing sleep. My savings were gone. I even took out a private loan to cover the expenses they couldn't, or rather, wouldn't, pay for. And yet, in spite of all this, I still believed in the marriage. In Daniel. Until 1 week before the wedding. That's when it all came crashing down. We were finalizing the seating chart at the Prescott estate when Daniel got a text. He excused himself from the room a little too quickly. I followed, quietly, down the hallway and into the den. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, I saw Daniel, on the phone, with his mother. "I know, Mom. I'm ending it tonight. Don't worry, she'll sign the prenup. She doesn't want trouble. She's too proud. She's just desperate to belong." My heart dropped. He continued, his voice low and mocking. "After the wedding, I'll phase her out. A quiet divorce. And then you can introduce me to whoever you want. We'll call it irreconcilable differences." I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. He was using me. They both were. The wedding, the expensive planning, the toxic control, it was never about love. It was about humiliation. A power play. A poor girl being used like a shiny accessory until the family PR looked good enough. I left the house in a daze. No one saw me. Not even Daniel. That night, I sat in my apartment and stared at my reflection for hours. And I made a decision. The next morning, I vanished. No warning. No explanation. I shut off my phone, canceled the venue, emailed the dress designer, and returned the wedding rings. And then, I started watching. I knew the Prescotts. Knew they thrived on perception, on status. So I bided my time. I watched their assets, their companies, their family trust auctions. I dug through tax records and liens and property history like my life depended on it. Because while they played chess with my heart, I was going to buy their king off the board. And that's when I found it. A forgotten listing. A foreclosure auction. One of the Prescott's legacy estates, Veronica's first home, the one she bragged about constantly, was going to auction due to a quiet legal battle between her late uncle's estate and an unpaid tax lien. It wasn't listed publicly yet, but it would be soon. And the starting bid was well within what I had quietly saved in silence. Because while they thought I was beneath them, they never noticed the real me. The girl who grew up poor, yes, but who hustled harder than any trust fund baby ever could. I had flipped apartments, designed luxury lofts, sold original furniture lines, all under the radar. They didn't know who they were messing with. So I registered for the auction and smiled, because soon they'd be the ones knocking on my door. You know what's funny? The same woman who called me temporary used to brag about her childhood home like it was Versailles. Veronica Prescott never shut up about it, a stone manor in the hills of Winterbrook with character and pedigree, where she'd learned to play piano and drink dry sherry by age 11. And now it was mine. I won it with one silent, calculated bid. No press release. No name on the public register. Just a trust fund set up under a shell company I had formed months earlier for design tax write-offs. I named it Dust and Vine Limited. Poetic, since that house was both. The auction closed with zero fanfare. The Prescotts had no idea it even happened. Because for once, they weren't watching me. But I was watching them. 2 weeks after the auction, I arrived at the property for the first time, keys in hand, heart pounding. The gate still had the old family crest above it, an ornate bronze P with 2 lions flanking a crown. The same symbol they once used on their Christmas cards, the ones they never sent to my side of the wedding list. I smiled, shoved the iron open, and stepped inside. It was beautiful, in a haunted kind of way. The structure was grand, stone columns, archways, ivy-draped terraces. But the inside? Cracked floors, moldy furniture, moth-eaten curtains, and a musky stink of privilege left to rot. I didn't want to erase it. I wanted to restore it carefully, like evidence. Every detail I preserved was intentional. The crooked chandelier in the music room, the dusty teacup set with gold initials, the framed childhood photos of Veronica in ballet slippers. I turned it all into a living museum of irony, because soon she'd walk in here again, not as the queen of the manor, but as a guest. I spent the next 3 months turning the property into a bespoke event space, a place for the new elite to throw parties in someone else's legacy. My company, Dust and Vine, advertised it as an exclusive, restored European-style villa for curated gatherings, where old-world charm meets modern independence. I never mentioned the Prescotts, but I made sure everyone else did. People started buzzing. Instagram influencers booked shoots. Independent film crews requested filming access. One of my old college friends hosted her wedding reception there and said, "I feel like I'm living inside an old money revenge fantasy." She didn't even know how right she was. Meanwhile, Daniel had moved on. Or tried to. He started dating the kind of woman his mother could parade around the country club without fear. Tall, blonde, legacy sorority, a respectable background. Her name was Juliet something. But their relationship was performative. Cold smiles at fundraisers, photo ops at vineyard luncheons. Juliet always looked slightly bored. Daniel looked exhausted. And Veronica? She looked smug. Until the invitation arrived. I made sure it came in a heavy black envelope with gold embossed lettering. A signature Dust and Vine invite. Event: Winterbrook Manor relaunch. Host: Dust and Vine Ltd. Theme: a home reclaimed. Dress code: formal elegance. Charity partner: the Working Women's Fund. I knew it would get to her. Veronica Prescott had too much pride to not attend. Especially once she realized it was her old estate, now transformed, glamorous, desirable again, without her fingerprints. She RSVP'd yes within hours. And guess who her plus one was? Daniel. The night of the event, I wore a deep emerald silk gown with gold embroidery. My hair was pinned back, my heels high, and my heart steady. Guests flowed in through the massive arched doors, marveling at the restored frescoes, the mood lighting, the free-flowing Prosecco. And then she arrived. Veronica Prescott, in a black velvet gown, her silver hair sculpted into waves like some monarch mourning her crown. She didn't recognize me at first. Not in this light. Not like this. But Daniel did. He froze mid-conversation, blinking like he'd seen a ghost. I smiled, tilted my glass, walked right up. "Welcome," I said softly. "So glad you could make it." Veronica blinked. "Clara?"
Oh,
"You do remember me." Daniel pulled me aside 10 minutes later. What is this?" "A party," I said simply. "You own this place?" I took a sip of champagne. "I bought it. At auction. 4 months ago." His face went pale. "This was our family's."
no.
"It was your family's liability. You didn't even know it was up for foreclosure, did you?" He stared at me, speechless. "You told your mother I was temporary," I whispered. "Guess what, Daniel? I'm permanent now." The rest of the night played like a symphony of poetic justice. Veronica tried to corner me later, lips tight. "This is indecent," she hissed. "Turning a family home into a venue for common people." I leaned in close. "This house has more dignity now than it ever did while you were using it to look down on others." She looked like she'd swallowed her pearls. But the best part? Halfway through the evening, I introduced the charity director of the Working Women's Fund and announced a donation drive in honor of all women who were told they'd never be enough. And I publicly credited my anonymous donor, a trust that had once belonged to Veronica's own uncle, whose forgotten will had led to the foreclosure. "It's funny," I said into the mic, "how forgotten legacies can build new ones when you stop guarding them like trophies." The applause was thunderous. Veronica left without saying goodbye. That night, as I stood alone in the ballroom, my ballroom, I felt the years of humiliation peeling off me like dead skin. They told me I wasn't enough. They said the rich don't marry the poor. They said I didn't belong. And now, they couldn't even afford the house they lost me in. They say revenge is best served cold. But I prefer it slow, like a meal savored over years, each bite deeper than the last. Because once you take away a rich man's power, you don't stop there. You make sure he knows exactly who took it. Daniel Prescott thought the worst was over when I bought his mother's house and hosted a charity gala inside it. He thought all he had to do was walk away, lick his wounds, and forget my name. But I wasn't finished. Because the house? That was just the opening move. A week after the event, I got a message. Not from Daniel. Not from Veronica. But from Juliet. His new girlfriend. "Can we talk? In person?"
Please.
"It's about Daniel. I think he's lying to me." I blinked at the screen for a full minute. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Some trap, maybe. Some Veronica-proved power play. But something in her tone felt real. So I agreed to meet her at a quiet cafe downtown, just outside the Prescott social radius. I wore plain clothes. No makeup. No show. And when Juliet walked in, she didn't look smug or spoiled like I'd expected. She looked tired.
Small.
Nervous. She slid into the booth and said without preamble,
"He proposed to me
2 nights ago." My heart didn't break. It didn't even flinch. "Congratulations," I said flatly. She shook her head.
No.
I didn't say yes. Not yet. Because I found something strange. And I think I know why he asked. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Laid it between us like a confession. It was a prenup. Same structure. Same clauses. Even the same typos as the one Daniel's lawyer had given me a year earlier. Except this one was dated 2 months before our wedding was even planned. My stomach turned. "He recycled it," I said under my breath. Juliet nodded. "Clara, I'm not naive. I know Daniel has a type. Women who seem convenient, Useful. I used to think I was different, but she stopped herself. Then she said the one thing I didn't expect. I want to help you. I want us to take him down. It turns out Juliet had been doing her own digging. She wasn't just some trophy fiancé. She was a business major from Columbia, interning with a hedge fund that had dealings with the Prescott's real estate holdings. She'd started noticing red flags, undisclosed debts, shady asset transfers, and legacy trust diversions that looked a little too creative. Veronica has been funneling money through dead real estate trusts into shell companies, Juliet explained, to protect the Prescott name in case their biggest holding, Prescott Global Developments, goes under. I blinked. Goes under? Juliet leaned in. They're broke, Clara. Or they will be soon. And they're hiding it. That's why Daniel was in such a rush to marry me. It's not love. It's leverage. I sat back, heart racing. All this time, they treated me like the charity case, the outsider. And now it turned out, I had more wealth in my design firm than they had in their whole empire. That night, I called my lawyer. I'd kept every record, every receipt from the wedding planning, the private loan I took out, the guest list I never approved, the surveillance footage of Daniel and Veronica whispering behind closed doors. And I wanted everything on paper. We're going to file a breach of verbal contract and emotional damages, I told him, but not for a payout. What then? He asked. I smiled. I want leverage. Just enough to crack their public image. I didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks later, the Prescotts hosted a garden brunch, a press-covered fundraiser to uplift local entrepreneurs. Veronica gave her usual sugar-coated speech about supporting self-made women. So I arrived, uninvited, in emerald silk again. Poetic, right? The reporters swarmed me like bees. Apparently they knew me now. The girl who turned an old money mansion into a working woman paradise. One brave journalist asked Veronica, "What do you think about Dust and Vine becoming the most sought-after private venue in Winterbrook?" Veronica smiled thinly. I don't believe I'm familiar. So I stepped forward, right into the camera's line of sight. Oh, she's familiar. She just doesn't recognize me without a catering apron on.
Gasps. Clicks.
Flashbulbs. Veronica's face went red. Daniel, standing behind her, turned away. I wasn't done. And speaking of entrepreneurship, I continued, I'd like to thank the Prescotts for inspiring me to start Dust and Vine. I believe women thrive most when underestimated. Juliet, who had arrived unnoticed in the back, clapped. The crowd followed. It was glorious. That night, I got an email from a journalist. They wanted to run a full profile on me, my journey, my business, my symbolic reclamation of the Prescott estate. I agreed, and I gave them everything, screenshots, emails, the prenup dates, proof of manipulation, even quotes from Juliet, who agreed to speak off record. The article dropped a week later. Title: Clara Marin, the woman who bought her ex-fiancé's legacy and turned it into an empire. It went viral overnight. 3 major consequences followed. 1. Prescott Global stock dipped sharply the next morning. Investors began questioning the integrity of their board. 2. The Working Women's Fund received triple its usual monthly donations, many from people who had never donated before. 3. And Veronica? She vanished from public life. Rumor had it she left for Italy to rest. But the real kicker?
Daniel emailed me.
Subject: You win. Clara, I never wanted this. I swear I didn't know what Mom was planning. I got swept up. I made mistakes. I miss you.
Can we talk?
I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to Juliet. She sent me one word back. Blocked. Months passed. Dust and Vine expanded to 2 new cities. I hired a team. I mentored other women who had been talked down to, stepped over, written off. People began calling me a mogul. But I never forgot where it started, with a brunch invite I was never supposed to hear and a wedding I was never meant to survive. They thought they broke me. But I wasn't broken. I was forged. The thing about men like Daniel Prescott? They don't unravel all at once. They fray in stages. First, the whispers. Then, the headlines. Then, the doors that once opened with ease suddenly creak shut. It happens slowly, but once it starts, it doesn't stop. And Daniel was now in free fall. I didn't have to touch him. I didn't have to ruin him. He did it all himself, with entitlement as his compass and arrogance as his map. It started with the article. After it dropped, Daniel became a punchline, a walking case study on how marrying for status could backfire. His company meetings were still happening technically, but he no longer led them. His name was quietly removed from Prescott Global's Strategic Outlook newsletter. Investors were panicking, and inside the boardroom, Veronica's seat was empty. Her European rest trip? It wasn't leisure. It was exile. Rumor had it she was trying to secure loans through an old friend in Milan, one who owed her favors from her debutante days. Meanwhile, Daniel began reaching out to people I knew, mutual acquaintances, old college friends, even a former professor of mine, all with the same pitiful refrain. Could you tell Clara I want to talk? No one told me. They didn't have to, because I already knew what I was going to do next. There's a difference between exposing someone and erasing their narrative. I had already exposed Daniel. Now I was going to rewrite the whole Prescott mythology in public. And it started with one event, a citywide art and architecture showcase. Dust and Vine was selected as a featured location. The theme? Reclaiming spaces, power, memory, and reinvention. I submitted a pitch. A bold one. An immersive experience that guided guests through curated rooms, each room dedicated to a chapter in the house's long, complicated legacy. I called it the anatomy of entitlement. My designer friend turned each room into a symbolic retelling of a Prescott chapter. The ballroom featured gold leaf fragments peeling from the ceiling, symbolizing wealth in decay. The garden had a single swing with broken pearls buried in the dirt. The drawing room played audio snippets of elitist advice passed down like scripture. All anonymous. But anyone who knew them knew. And at the center of the showcase, I placed one item behind a velvet rope. A framed letter. The prenup. With the date circled in red. The caption below read, "Sometimes the ink reveals more than the intention." Opening night drew a crowd bigger than any Dust and Vine event before. Designers, artists, press, and surprisingly, a few Prescott shareholders. I watched them drift through the exhibit with fascination and quiet horror on their faces. It was tasteful. It was damning. It was viral within hours. 3 days later, Daniel finally showed up. I was sitting in the garden, the very one where his mother once hosted lemon drop brunches for acceptable guests, when I saw him standing at the gate. He looked thinner,
Pale.
hollow. I should have felt pity. I didn't. "You don't have to keep humiliating me," he said, voice low. I set my tea down and faced him. "You're wrong. I never had to. You did that all by yourself." He stepped forward. "Clara, I made a mistake. I let her run everything. I was weak. You were cruel."
He paused.
"I loved you. In my way." I shook my head.
No.
"You wanted to own me. You wanted someone who would worship you, forgive everything, and disappear quietly. I don't do quiet, Daniel." His eyes shimmered. For the first time, I think he realized he wasn't in a negotiation.
He was at the end.
"I lost everything. You lost nothing. You didn't treat like it was disposable." A long silence. Then he said the one thing I wasn't expecting. "I wish I was you." I looked him in the eye.
No, Daniel.
"You wish you were with me. That's not the same." He didn't argue. He left without another word. And I didn't watch him go. The following month, I received a letter. Not an email. An actual letter, embossed and hand-delivered. It was from Veronica. "Clara, we both know what this is. You win." I could say many things. I could offer apologies, explanations, regrets. But the truth is, you were never the outsider. I was. You walked into a world I thought I owned, and you rebuilt it without my rules. For that, I both hate and admire you. Use the house well. It suits you now.
V.
I didn't frame it, but I saved it. Because I knew this wasn't just an end. It was the start of a legacy. Mine. A year later, Dust and Vine had 6 locations across the country. Our Winterbrook estate became the flagship. We partnered with charities, hosted story nights, funded women-led startups. And every tour of the estate ended the same way, in the music room, where I placed a single plaque on the wall. It reads, "She was told she didn't belong, so she bought the room." Success has a funny way of attracting shadows. For every hand clapping in the open, there's always one pulling strings in the dark. And just when I thought I'd rewritten the entire Prescott story, I found out someone had quietly been trying to edit mine. It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't even Veronica. It was someone much closer. It started with an error. A small one, a missing document in one of my newest venue applications. My team triple-checked everything before submission, but the zoning approval for our Chicago location had mysteriously disappeared from the digital folder. Weird, but not impossible. Then it happened again. And again. Until one of my brand partners pulled out of a major event citing concerns over ownership legality. That's when I knew. Someone was sabotaging me. I called a private tech investigator, a recommendation from a trusted friend, and handed him everything. Emails, server logs, staff account access, even personal messages. He worked silently for 2 weeks. Then one morning he called and said, "You're going to want to sit down for this." What he found? A pattern of deliberate deletion and tampering, all traced to a company email used by someone I never would have suspected.
Mel.
My operations manager. My right-hand woman. My college roommate. We'd been through it all together, pulling all-nighters over ramen noodles, helping each other navigate toxic internships, celebrating when I landed my first freelance design gig. She was the one who helped me build Dust and Vine from the ground up. So when I confronted her, I was shaking. Not from fear, from heartbreak.
Why?
I asked her. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She just stared at me, eyes empty. "You changed," she said quietly. "No," I whispered. "I grew. You grew past me." That hit like a slap. "You think I wanted this to be about me?" she said. "But every article, every interview, it's Clara, Clara, Clara. Like you built this alone. Like I was just your assistant. You were my partner, Mel." I said that in every interview. But they never saw it. They never printed it. You became the face, the name. I became a ghost. "So you tried to burn it all down?" I asked, stunned.
"No," she said.
"I just wanted you to slow down. To need me again." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just told her to leave. She packed her things that night. No farewell party. No speech. Just a locked office and a shredded trust. It hurt more than Daniel ever did. Because love doesn't blind you the way loyalty does. The fallout was swift. A few vendors walked. A few clients got nervous. But the core of Dust and Vine remained intact, because by now the company wasn't just built on my name. It was built on impact, purpose, reputation. But still, the betrayal lingered. Until I remembered something Veronica once told me in her ice-cold way. Control is a house built of glass. It only takes one stone to remember gravity. And I had a stone I hadn't used yet. One final move. One perfectly legal piece of paperwork that I had been holding in my back pocket since the very beginning. Months ago, during the foreclosure process on the Prescott estate, I discovered an odd clause in the original deed. Something about a covenant of legacy. A standard clause in heritage estates like that one. It stated that any party who had once been a legal heir to the property, but allowed it to default, forfeited future claim not only to the property itself, but to associated intellectual property or branding likeness tied to the estate. Veronica had signed off on it years ago during a refinancing shuffle. And when I had rebranded the estate as Dust and Vine, I had filed for trademark protection, not just on the business name, but on a curated experience based on the Prescott legacy narrative. Every time they tried to market their Prescott Lineage Gala or push a Prescott Signature brand of high-end linens, they hit a wall.
Because I owned it now.
Not just the house. The story. They try to fight it. Daniel sent me a cease and desist letter demanding that I stop profiting from the family name. So, I framed it, hung it in the estate's powder room, and then I posted a public letter on Dust and Vine's website.
It read,
To the Prescott family, you once told me I wasn't good enough to share your table. So I bought the whole estate and registered the recipes, too. Sincerely, the poor girl, who read the fine print. People went wild. The letter trended online. I got messages from young women who had been told they'd never amount to anything. From men who watched their families collapse under pride. From interns. From small business owners. From single moms. The Prescott name had once symbolized unreachable wealth. Now it was a meme, a lesson. And the girl who was told to enter through the side gate? She was owning the keys to the front door. The betrayal from Mel left a scar. But scars don't break you. They remind you where the fire was. And I had one last room to renovate. The upstairs guest suite. The one Veronica used to use whenever she wanted some space from her children. I turned it into a scholarship office. The Dust and Vine Legacy Grant. 4 first-generation entrepreneurs. 4 daughters of single mothers. For anyone who'd been laughed out of a room for not having the right background. The walls were painted a deep navy. The shelves were filled with letters of gratitude from women who now had businesses of their own. And on the door, a golden plaque that read, Entrance by courage only. It was a crisp spring afternoon, the kind where sunlight feels like it's warming you from the inside out, when the past knocked on my front door for the last time. And this time, I didn't hide behind a gate. I opened it. He looked older. Daniel Prescott stood on the stone steps of the estate he once bragged about inheriting. His hair was longer, his eyes more hollow than I remembered. No designer coat, no entourage, no smug half-smile. Just a man who had run out of illusions. I didn't say a word. He handed me an envelope.
thick,
Cream-colored. Heavy. Then he spoke quietly. It's from her. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. I took the envelope and nodded. No hug. No awkward reminiscing. He turned to go, but then paused. You look peaceful. I finally replied. That's what happens when you stop waiting for permission to belong. And I closed the door. The letter inside was from Veronica Prescott. It was handwritten, slanted with the kind of expensive penmanship you learn in finishing school. I sat in the garden and read it under the same sunlit trellis she used to decorate with white roses for socialite luncheons.
Clara.
I won't pretend this is a letter of apology. You deserve more than that, and you've already taken it. But I owe you an acknowledgement. I raised Daniel to think that women like you were ornaments. Disposable. Pretty accents for legacy walls. But you weren't an ornament. You were the architect. And I missed it. I've lost my home, my social circle, and more money than I care to admit. But what I regret most is never seeing your worth until it stood on higher ground than mine. Take this as a final gesture, not of peace, but of respect. I've instructed my lawyers to release the last of my personal holdings, the original Prescott family ledger, dating back to 1904. It is, quite literally, the root of our name. Use it how you see fit. May your legacy be one of fire, not frost. Veronica. I sat with the letter for a long time. Not crying. Not angry. Just still. Because in that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully admitted to myself. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I had already won. The Prescott family ledger arrived the next week, bound in cracked leather, filled with brittle parchment, and inked with generations of arrogance. I didn't burn it. I didn't lock it away. I displayed it, right in the foyer. Under glass. But with one final addition. A handwritten card beneath it. This house no longer belongs to names. It belongs to stories. And everyone is welcome through the front door. Years passed. Dust and Vine became more than a business. It became a movement. A community. A home for voices the world once dismissed. We launched programs. Mentorships. Creative labs. Pop-ups in cities that had been forgotten by the rich and fenced off by gatekeepers. And that old Prescott estate? It's not called that anymore. Now, it's the Marin House. My name. Not out of ego, but as a reminder that even a girl who was once told to take the side entrance could one day hold the deed and rewrite the entire narrative. Sometimes I still walk the halls at night, barefoot, silent, remembering. I pass the framed invitation to the wedding that never happened, the gallery of scholarship recipients, the powder room with Daniel Cease and Desist, the golden plaque upstairs. Every detail is intentional, because this place isn't about revenge anymore. It's about arrival. It's about every person who was told they weren't good enough, rich enough, pretty enough, worthy enough, now stepping through the front door of a legacy they built themselves. And when visitors ask me what it feels like to own the very house where I was once humiliated, I smile, and I tell them the truth. It feels like justice. But more than that, it feels like home.